I used to work in a lot of hospitals. I think one of the biggest complaints from clients was that they did not feel safe. I probably would prefer to see that doctors also understand the mental or emotional impact that they do on the clients. And it's kind of like in and out, or we do our job. Only a person that feels safe will really heal well.
What's the issues with our society, why we get out of this, let's call, balance?
We start with children that sit way too much. We have this very fast spinning world, which is putting a lot of pressure on the people, and not on a seated body that cannot get out of it. About 80% of all people will experience back problems, back pains, sooner or later. But in my opinion, pain medication is being prescribed too fast and too long. Our body is the only vessel that will join us from the beginning to the end on our journeys. So we have to respect it and maintain it.
Welcome to the Living a Life in Balance podcast. My name is Abdullah Boulad, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Balance Rehab Clinic. My guest today is Elke Bilger, physiotherapist, massage therapist, and movement specialist with expertise in deep tissue massage, lymphatic drainage, and more. In this episode, we explore what body alignment reveals about stress, habits, and history, and how small, consistent changes in movement can lead to powerful transformation. You will learn how early imbalances in childhood, modern lifestyle habits, and even emotional stress can lead to chronic pain and posture issues later in life. We investigate why so many people struggle with back problems and spinal compression, and how misalignment in the body affects everything from the nervous system to organ function. We discuss the cycle of tension in the body and practical tips to reveal this on a regular basis. We round out the conversation with practical tips to introduce on a daily basis, showing how to raise kids in alignment and debunking myths around aging, including why many injuries and physical issues are not inevitable but preventable. I hope you will enjoy. Elke? What motivated you to do what you do today?
Well, actually, I became a physiotherapist at the age of 30 when I had the opportunity in Germany to do a paid re-educational program. And actually, I wanted to do hippotherapy or therapeutic riding with horses and children. Mm-hmm. And for those, you have to have either the education of an educator, a teacher, or a physiotherapist. So physiotherapy just came kind of like first and natural for me.
What have you been doing before that time?
Well, actually, at this time, I stopped my career with Continental Airlines in America. And I spent a few years living in America. And when I came back to work with them in Germany, the contract ended. And then I just ended up having this opportunity for a re-educational program.
Yeah. You could have done anything in your life. Why physiotherapy? Why were you interested in the body?
Well, actually, I was almost all my life absolutely interested in planes. I wanted to become a pilot. But, this career kind of like passed by me. And while I was in America, I was listening to this informational television, and they talked about how well it works to work with disabled and mentally disturbed children together with horses. And I was absolutely fascinated by this combination because I've always been a horse lover. Mm-hmm. I started riding at the age of 7, so I thought this is kind of like the perfect combination for me to get into.
Okay, so horses motivated you to look into the body and be connected with the body.
Exactly.
Somehow. Okay.
Yes.
Do you do today anything with horses?
Well, I do have 2 horses, yes, but I just basically do this privately. When I was in the school for physiotherapy, I also did an internship on the horse therapy. But at this time, they told me that this is kind of like a job for people with a lot of money in the background or a strong income husband in the background because horses eat a lot. And the horse therapies are not always paid by the insurance companies. So it's kind of like not such a stable business. And at this time, I didn't have my own horse, so I would have had to buy a horse and all that stuff. And the lady from the internship at the horse place, at the horse therapy place, she told me, if you're smart, you stay or you become a physiotherapist for the people and you have horses for your hobby.
That's what you do today.
And I ended up doing this. But really, very fast, I discovered my passion for the human body. So that was kind of never like a loss to me to stay with the humans.
What does excite you about the human body?
The body is always interesting. No matter how many bodies you treat, they're always a little bit different. And I don't know how to really describe it, but for me, it's kind of like a challenge to find out where the trigger points is, where the disalignments sit, and find a solution for the patients to become better, to feel better.
I always found it fascinating, when I speak with some therapists, physiotherapists or massage therapists, that how they feel the body. Does it come out of experience with the years or out of training? How is it for you? Because you explained to me you know everybody is different and you feel and see the body. How did it come to you?
Actually, in my case, really with experience. I would say, not such a clumsy person before, but I always did kind of like hard physical things. I never like had the fine work with the fingers. So, I mean, I'm not as sensitive as an artist with the fingers. So in the beginning, in the training, I sometimes really thought just like, oh my God, I will never feel the difference with my hands. But of course, then that's a form of training.
Yeah.
Yes.
And experience over the years.
Yes, obviously experience, yes.
Yeah. There are different techniques in this field of physiotherapy, working, aligning the body. What techniques are out there and what's your favorite or the one you've been trained with?
Well, really, there are so many different techniques these days. And I think every day there's more techniques coming into the world, which is great. In the basic school of physiotherapy, you study, of course, the human body. And then there is the manual therapy forms, where you try to change the physical body, but you also learn all the massage techniques, the techniques to work with the connective tissue. You study also like all the techniques that go for the aquatherapy, which means like massage baths, or how to train somebody in the swimming pool, and then also the lymphatic drainage is one part of it. Then the basics that are taught in school, they're just fine, but at my time, it was not as complete as I would have wanted to it. It was not like a really integrative kind of version that we had gotten at school. And so usually people go out later for more educational programs. Some of them are very lengthy, like the manual therapy. If you really want to have the certificate, it's a study about another 2.5 years. And I wasn't too interested in that because for me, it didn't really work. And I also realized that a lot of the things that they teach at physio school are kind of like assessments, and you kind of like, you observe it and you write down how the position is, but it wasn't so much about treating people. And so while I was in school still, I had a back problem myself. And I went to a therapist that did the Dorn method. Also, I had a disalignment on my hip joint. I had one leg that was longer. And so they repaired that like this with this method. And I thought just like, ooh, this is really cool. It doesn't seem to be so much effort. And I think I want to learn this. So that was my first study after I left school. That was my first class. And it really thrilled me so much. I trained until I became also a Dorn method instructor.
Can you explain us a little bit more? What is the Dorn method, and what's the difference between, let's say, a regular physiotherapist work?
The Dorn method is a manual form of therapy. And with this method, you're also working with the static of a person or the alignment. Yeah, but it's kind of like based on the entire bone structures and the joints. So in this method, we look for the entire body in one session. If we have enough time, of course. So we will see if the legs are in the same length, if all the joints are in its place. And then we look at the entire spine. And if we find curves or, dislocated, they're kind of like moved, little bit blocked vertebrae, we mobilize them back to their center. And this is a little bit different. A lot of people think it's chiropractic, but we don't work with speed. We don't do anything cracking.
Yes.
We have to have the help of the client because they have to move the body. They have to either swing the leg or swing the arms because bones you can hardly move if the muscles are kind of like tied to it. So it's kind of like an interactive therapy as well for the clients.
When I look at the body, you need certainly first to be able to assess what is the issue, and then second, how to address it.
Yes.
So the Dorn method helps you to assess mainly.
Exactly. And then correct.
And then on what you correct. And what exactly would you correct usually with your clients?
Well, it really depends, what they have. There's people that have only a few issues. Maybe they have a rigid middle spine because they're working too much on the computer. So we want to help this area of the spine to get back into rotation and into its place.
Yeah.
But there's also people that have joints that are not in the congruent position anymore because they had like skiing accidents or any form of accidents. And so we are kind of like putting everything back into place as natural as we can, which is not always possible because sometimes time and age. And I always say that's when they get too rusty, then it's kind of like a hard work.
Rusty, you mean when they age and with lack of movement?
With lack of movement, exactly. Sometimes joints, especially after some surgeries or some accidents, they get too rigid. But then we want to improve the flexibility of the joints as good as we can.
You mentioned before like massages and physiotherapy, Dorn.
Yes.
So different things. And there are a lot of body therapists out there, different methods, techniques, lymphatic drainage, and so on. Where do you see the difference between, let's say, a wellness massage and more deeper work like lymphatic drainage or physiotherapy? Does it give different signals to the body? Like, what's the difference exactly there?
Exactly. They always have like a different subject, or like a point to treat the body in some forms. So the lymphatic drainage, for example, is to get all the liquids more moving. It's also a good treatment for detox. But it's, of course, in the upper connective tissues. It's like not down on like a muscle level. And for the massage, I mean, the wellness massages are very nice for some people because the mind just can relax and they feel they can slow down a little bit. But in general, they don't work on the profound structures of the muscle tissues, the fibers, if there's some problems, right? So, I actually have become a great fan of deep tissue or sport massage, however you want to call it. For me, they're kind of like a little bit the same. And because I see the benefit of working into the structures when they're too tense.
So you like it when it's tense in the body and then go deep. I understand.
I actually don't like a tense body. I would prefer people are not so tense.
Yes.
But yes, when I have to do the work, I actually like doing the work.
Well, what can someone do on a regular basis, let's say, to not become tense? Is there like what type of body treatments would be recommended to do regularly?
Well, that depends a little bit on the status of a client, because if they're quite tense already, then I would recommend a lot of physiotherapy sessions involved with deep tissue massages in a rather fast frequency, right? And if you're not so tense, I think it's kind of like good to just find some time to find some treatments that maybe are not so hurtful, but made to get the body into a certain flow again.
Can we maybe talk a little bit about how would you do a body assessment? What would you look at, and from what angle? What do you try to understand to evaluate a body alignment or misalignments?
Yes. Well, I generally look at the entire posture, but I usually start with the legs. Okay, I really want to already see if the legs seem in the same length or if there's any differences. Because if the legs are not in the same same length, then we also have an upgrowing problem. So if the pelvic system, cannot sit straight on the legs, then also the spine has to move in a certain way, because the body basically has one rule for itself. It tries to keep everything on the same eye level. This is very important to our balance organs, because if we're running around like the Tower of Pisa, then this is going to very difficult for the entire system to manage anything around. So whenever we have a disalignment coming already up from the legs, then everything shifts a little bit left, right, and the body's trying to find its compensation until about eye level is reached again.
Okay, so you're explaining this like if the foundation is not right, it will have effect on the rest of
it will
up to the roof.
Exactly.
Basically. And while the body compensates, so where in the body would like tensions or problems or pain usually arise because of this body alignment problem?
I think that's a very individual thing, because it is not only how your posture is, it's also how you handle your everyday life. You know, how is your work space? How hard do you work, or how much do you move? And there's many things that flow together. I've seen people that are very, very out of balance, and they had no problems because their system was functioning in itself for some reasons we sometimes don't understand, because the books from the physiotherapy teach us that only a straight body is a good body, which is not completely true. But of course, if you're like out of alignment, the problems may add up to pressure points and tensions. You know, so we always want to see if we can correct it as good as possible.
It's fascinating to me how you can just look at a person and figure out, oh, that's wrong, or this is the spine. Or sometimes we look at ourselves day by day. And I have this little story about my daughter, and I have been with her for so many years, and been looking at her certainly, and until to a point where she was at a doctor. And this doctor told us, yes, she's not straight with her shoulder. And then suddenly we started to look differently at her, my wife and I, and we saw, yeah, that's true. And we've never saw that, basically. And this is what usually happens every day. Like we look in the mirror at ourselves, at our partners, but we don't see this alignment. But what's wrong about our view? How can we train our view to see these things in ourselves or in others?
Yes. Well, what you just said is quite common. First of all, for ourselves, we don't really see the difference if we don't have the schooled awareness to really look into the mirror with a naked body and like see how the hip, the shoulders are aligned, you know, or how the legs are even moving, and much less with our children as well. And that usually is because we don't start growing in a disaligned fashion just from one day to another. We're not straight and then we flip. So this is kind of like a process that goes slowly, and every day or every month a little bit more and a little bit more. And so our mind doesn't notice the difference so fast because we're used to what we see every day. It's kind of like the same when you watch your children grow. You don't think they've become much bigger, but the aunt that hasn't seen the children in a month, she goes like, "Oh, how big they are now," and you go just like, "Well, I thought that they're the same," because you're so used to seeing them grow just a tiny little bit, every week or whatever, and so that's why we lose the awareness of the changes. And it's quite common that children develop scoliosis, and parents have never noticed. Because they see their children play, walk around, eyes are on level, everything else seems fine. And quite often also some disalignments are noticed by the parents and by the doctors. And I think one of the old-fashioned mistakes that we've done in the past is to say, well, the child will grow out of it.
Yes.
You know? So, because a lot of people think it's kind of like normal to have disalignments. And sometimes, yes, it's the same with, all creatures. They change sometimes how they act, how they move, and then sometimes it seems a little bit more right, a little bit more left. Things can change. And then we think just like, okay, sooner or later, the body will find itself in the center again.
Yeah.
But too many times that doesn't happen.
Does the body find its balance, or is it more becoming a chronic problem over time?
Most of the time now these days, it's becoming a chronic problem because we have the first we have the disalignment for some reasons. Then we have more stress, or maybe some accidents. We're seated too much, and so the body usually gets into this habit, and the nervous system reflects the position is normal. And it's kind of like habitual. But then when we're like in a stress mode, working mode, or whatever, we have very little awareness or time to center ourselves. So, that's kind of like also an awareness and a training matter.
How is our body structured? What's the anatomy of our body you look at? The skeleton, the muscles, the tissues. So can you explain me a little bit how this all works together, our fascinating physical body, and what you exactly work at?
The body is, of course, much more complicated than I can tell you right now, because this would take too much time. But we have the basic of the structures are the bones, right? And we have the joints that combine the bones. And those bones have ligaments and capsulas and tendons that are attached to them. And then in between the ligaments or the tendons, we have the muscles. Okay, the muscles are the most important part of the body to get us moving, because without the activity of a muscle, the bones will be just hanging and there's no movement. So then, of course, we have other structures, like we have the outer skin layers that keep us all together and protect us from the environment. And then we have the connective tissue, and then a little bit deeper, also the fascias, which kind of like surround the entire inside of the muscle structures as well. And then, of course, we have the nervous system that goes into all body parts, the liquids, the blood, the lymphatic systems, and they all work together. So, and it would be bad to say that one part is more important than the other, because everything in this system, everything works together. This is kind of like one flow. You cannot do damage to one part of the body and not have an effect in the entire system, more or less sometimes, because sometimes there are small impacts that you just don't feel in the other part of the body. But usually it's kind of like if you touch one part, it has an effect on the rest of the body. And I personally basically specialized in reorganizing bones and taking trigger points out of muscles. And for me, those, I want to say again, this is like, not to say that nothing else is important, but the bones and the joints, they don't have their own standing. They don't have their own posture, right? They're led by muscles. So if a muscle is in a good shape, which means the fibers, when they need to be active, go inside, and when this is like a normal tension, when they come back out again, right? But many times those fibers kind of like start gluing together. They just don't release all the pressure or the tension anymore. So, and then with time, if the position is not corrected, the tension gets more and more and more, especially if there's stress and too much activity or whatever, and the body gets into a situation where it does not know how to release the stress out of the muscles anymore, which will make a pull onto some bones in the body. Take, for example, you're right-handed. You have more activity with the right hand, and so you're starting to like have more tensions in the upper right neck, shoulder area. And so this would kind of like pull your head like over this, because the tendons of the muscles are connected to the bones. So they, whenever there's a tension, it shortens the muscle. So the bone moves a little bit to this side. Most time we look even with this. I mean, there's a lot of people that run a little bit around with a disaligned head, but most times the other side now will work quite a bit in order for you not to really fall over to one side. This is the same from the front and the back. So when you want to correct a position, you really have to work on the muscles to make them long enough. If, for example, too short in the front for all the work that we do to the front, or you have to strengthen them to do some strengthening work if they are getting too weak to hold the position. But you have to basically find a situation for the muscle groups to function in a way where they can open all the way or even overstretch and gain the strength again to do their job, right? And every tension in a muscle is leading to first of the disalignment, but then also we cannot really develop the exact strengths that we would need in a muscle that is already pre-tensed, And then the next part of the muscles is if there's too much tension pulling on the tendons, then the tendons start getting overloaded or overstressed, which, for example, somebody that has the Achilles tendon torn, there was a lot of tension in the calf muscles before. They just didn't notice so much. And that was putting stress again and stress again and stress again on the tendon until it finally gave up, right? So there's a higher risk of injury if there's tensions in the muscles, and you have less quality of muscle strength, and of course, tensions with pain.
Okay. So most problems start in the muscles.
I wouldn't say that they start there because I mean this is kind of like something that I think we still don't know or understand to the fullest. Because a muscle itself shows the problem, but if this was the start to the problem, we never know.
Certainly, it's the behavior, it's the use, it's our movement, it's our daily use of our body.
Exactly.
As you mentioned, the example of writing or sitting at the computer or having your phone in your arm and looking always to one direction, or possibly crossing my feet, or sitting. Just these habits have influence on our muscles.
But if I may add to it, there's a reaction of the muscles that are mainly physical, but we also have a reaction of muscle tissues that are biochemical. So there's kind of like, for example, these days prove that if somebody is not in a good situation of nutrition, for example, having too many toxins in the body, or stress hormones, even stress hormones matter a lot to the tension that we show in fascias and in the muscle body. So toxins can influence it. There's, I think, quite a bit of research these days that also the electrosmog kind of like gives a signal to the nerves, which the nerves signal to the muscles to hold a higher tension. So, I mean, there's a lot of environmental stress also that might influence, how this is.
Okay, so it's a bit more complex than
it
simplifying
is very
it.
complex.
Okay, it's the problem.
Exactly.
It starts with the muscle, but let's say the muscle is the first one to show like the tensions and which tries to adjust, to compensate, maybe is the better word, or whatever problem is there. And this compensation leads to issues on the bones, joints and tendons and other areas.
Yes, for me this
simplified enough.
Yes, simplified enough, exactly. I mean, if it's for the normal wear and tear of life, then this is probably what we can say. I would want to exclude like accidents that will impact the body in a different manner. So you, for example, you have an accident with a car, you have a whiplash in the neck, and now your bones are threatened because you go into this impact, and the muscles now will tension up in order to keep that position safe. Because without the muscles, your head would be flying through the window when you have a car accident. So they tighten up, and now this is kind of like a protective response of the muscles, which is harder to treat if time goes by and it was not treated right away. Then this can cause quite a few problems.
If we summarize this, so there are these two different ways with like an immediate impact, like an accident or an injury, this could have an effect on the body where the body tries to adjust. But there is also more the slowly chronic development.
Exactly. Basically, there are three things. It's the habitual way we carry our body. Then there's the accidents and the impacts that we have, even sometimes from very small falls. There can be a big impact on the body, and the biochemical response.
Yes. And what about surgeries? If you have to do a surgery, this is also an impact on the body.
Yes, of course. Well, let's say the second one is kind of like an injury kind of like style. Accidents, surgeries, they have a big impact on the body, especially if after a surgery, scars are not treated well. Because scars will tighten then up the connective tissues, and they might not give back the elasticity to the entire system.
Yes.
And they even might hold back nervous responses or lymphatic, flow in that area. So they might impact also quite well.
I've came across also over the years, like discovering how my body reacts and which parts when I get some pain. For example, my left knee, if for a while I don't do any sport, I start feel my knee like a little pain every time I stand up. But I don't feel my knee if I'm trained, if I go for a run, if I have my regular routine. So if my muscles are strong enough to hold whatever is here around, and the same I was able to absorb also with my shoulder. If I don't train my back and my shoulders and my I will get pain probably every time on my left back shoulder side. So these are like certain patterns they repeat if I don't care about my muscles and train them. Where does this come from, and does it go with your experience?
Yes, it does. But I have to say that even though I would never suggest for anybody not to train, I think training and or having enough exercise, enough movement in the body is always very important to maintain everything from the physical well-being. But even if you wouldn't train for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks and then you start a little walking again, nothing should hurt. So, I mean, if you have a knee or like a shoulder that is only actively showing you some pain sometimes, there's something wrong already underneath. It's kind of like the body does not give us all the signals that we have in the body, because usually the nervous system works a little bit like this. If there's something going on that is to be noticed, the body will tell you. If it's kind of like in the habitual mode, then, the body sometimes will tell you something, sometimes not, only if the glass is getting too full and there's a threat to the position, to the wear of the knee or the shoulder or whatever, and the body now says, this I cannot tolerate anymore. Then it goes on with the pain signals. If you would feel everything that is going on in your body, you would be in the mental hospital in about 1 hour, because it's so much information that is going on there. And since we are kind of like, except for like having an accident, and then we know this knee has been damaged and, we need to treat it until it's like working normally again. The little wear and tear things, they kind of like sneak up on you and then they drop, and then sneak up on you and they drop. And this is usually also connected with a movement, because as soon as you get moving or training, you're activating the body, which means that there's more heat also going into the body, which will release some of the tension than in the muscles. So you have a little bit more space, and then the shoulder or the knee says, it's like, oh, okay, this position is fine for me now. But it should never hurt. There's always something disaligned. There's always some sort of position, information, stress, pressure on any part of the body that starts hurting sometimes.
Yeah, so it's pretty normal then that problems or issues come up always in the same areas. If someone repeats the same patterns again and again.
It's a sign.
It's a sign.
It's a sign.
If you look at the body I wanted to say from top down, but it's actually from the bottom up.
Yes.
Because this is what affects us. When you get to the hips, for example, where do you see problems happening?
Well, this is actually something that we really have to find out when we look at a person, because there's different reasons for legs that are not the same length, and they're not always the same. And just because you mentioned it's coming from down, well, that's not always the one. I mean, this is not a one-way road, right? So it can also be that your legs are not in the same length for something that is dysfunctioning higher up. We know, for example, that people that have problems with the jaw, and take a child that had like the bracelets, right? And now they have too much pressure or the jaw is not really aligned. This will influence on your sacrum, right? And so if your sacrum is kind of like not in a very good position, then your legs are usually not either. There could be something on the hips, on the knees, on the ankles. Some people tripped maybe 20 years ago. Now they tell me, but after, a few kilometers of hiking, always the ankle still hurts, which is usually because this ankle has never been brought back into the perfect position, right? So there can be a length difference of all the joints. It can also be that the sacrum is kind of like blocked, or it can be that somebody is, for the position that they're holding, developing a curve in the spine, and a curve in the spine has an answer further down as well. We have the jaw problems. There can be so much in between. There can be scars.
Yes.
For example, when I was in school, I had a lot of pain as well, and it turned out that everything on my body was too much right. So I had a surgery when I was 12 years old on my knee, and we discovered there how disturbed the scar was. And it kind of like took everything with too much tension on the right. So it kind of like pulled me always to the right side. The left side had to overcompensate, of course, so I don't fall to the right side. And so just the scar did a lot of my disalignment there, right? Yeah. But then for the length of the leg, also quite interesting for the mental part is that we might be off-centered for the brain activities, right? We're right-brained or left-brained. Naturally, everybody is. And so when somebody is, for example, an overthinker, the logical person, always in this one side of the head, using everything that he's got there to deal with life, then there's a disbalance of the energy just coming down from the brain, which is, by the way, usually crossing, from the head down, the nerve sites, they're crossing. And, or the other one is maybe too emotional. It's all the time emotionally and a little bit dreamy and artful, whatever. So the other side is overcompensating. So then I usually do a brain alignment and connect the two brains back to each other. And then many times without touching anything physical.
How do you do that?
Then there's a straight leg syndrome all suddenly.
Yeah?
Yes.
So how do you align the brains?
Well, actually, it's kind of like an awareness thing, really. You just let the patients think into, or, feel into all the areas of one brain, in the front and the left, the side, top, back, and let them explore as much as they can to just feel into that part of their head. And then you switch to the other side. And then you do this a few times back and forth. And then you can have like a kind of like a crossing movement, or follow with the eyes like a figure eight, which will, cross the bridge on both hemispheres of the brain. And they connect better with each other then. So, and it's quite interesting because a lot of people that especially respond to a better leg position with this brain alignment tell me that, oh my God, the left brain was so hard to feel. The right brain was completely fine. Easy, but the left brain, I had a hard time getting in there and really finding all the corners. And then you naturally know which brain side they don't use so often.
But this is where we feel like emotions, or if someone has some trauma, and this is where then it goes also into the body and manifests in some certain area.
That is quite a different subject and a very big one, because a lot of things that we have physically are caused by trauma, emotions. In German, we say when the shock is getting stuck in the bones, right? And this is quite true. For example, children that had an accident on the playground, being in a very bad emotional space, they broke their elbow. Usually the elbow just doesn't heal or recover as good, while while the emotion is stuck in there.
Yes.
So, and a lot of people had smaller or bigger traumas that they don't even reconnect anymore to anything emotional because maybe it was a long time away, or a long time ago, and they feel safe now with their conscious level, but their unconscious level gives a feedback to the body. Then every time it kind of like passes another stress situation close to an accident, or something that reminds them of the accident, then the body gives alarm signals to say just like, okay, danger, 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 right? It's a lot of, times people that had a car accident, they had a whiplash, maybe there were some other bigger injuries or not. And now they feel fine driving again, they feel safe, but their body gives the danger signal of just cars are dangerous, accidents happen.
Yes.
So every time they come back out of the car, they feel more tense and they go just like, I don't know why, it's the car that is so uncomfortable. Maybe I'd need a different car, but it's kind of like their physical memory of this is not a safe place to be.
Yeah.
And so traumatized, usually I was traumatized with a scar. I'm very sure that, my scar didn't heal very well because I was deeply traumatized, when I was in the hospital having the surgery, because the doctor that gave me the narcosis, she was just not nice at all. And my orthopedic doctor, he was kind of like a little children's monster as well. So I was not in a safe place to have the surgery. And of course, nobody thinks about this. But then, when they started releasing that scar, I even started getting memories of how that felt to be in this unsafe place, being put to sleep, and somebody is, doing something on my leg.
Yes.
Not nice. And little did I know at this time, because I was not a trained physiotherapist yet. So I carried that around for almost another 20 years.
What could you have done differently there? If you would have known, to whom would you have gone? How would you have treated it?
If I would have known it right away, I could have not probably undone how unnice they treated me in the hospital. But then later you can also have different techniques to do emotional stress relief. We have from kinesiology, other treatments that, work with the emotions, stress relief methods. And then, of course, somebody that takes care of it physically.
Yes.
Because most parts that stay injured or don't recover very well from injuries, they just need a little bit more love and care.
So yeah, we shouldn't, if we have a scarf or we have a surgery, we shouldn't then just look at recovering physically in that sense, but also to process it emotionally,
Yes, absolutely.
as well as on the muscle and fascias and all what's connecting this wound.
Absolutely. And while I do absolutely appreciate that we have doctors and hospitals that are technically so evolved, it's a safe bet that you will come out alive, and they may be cutting in the perfect way and doing their best and everything. But I probably would, prefer to see that doctors also understand the mental or emotional impact that they do on the clients. And a lot of doctors still kind of like, even if they're highly professional on what they do, but they're kind of like treating people a little bit like a piece of meat, right? It's kind of like in and out, and we do our job. But I used to work in a lot of hospitals. Because for the schooling of Germany, for the physiotherapy, you have to go to the hospital for all the different topics that we learn. And I think one of the biggest complaints from clients was that they did not feel safe. Nobody talks to them, and they feel kind of like nobody respects them, and the doctor doesn't really care. And so it's kind of like a little hard world out there. And I think it would be nice if everybody that works on the body, including physiotherapists, has the empathy to understand that what we do also has an emotional impact on the people.
Yeah.
And only a person that feels safe will really heal well. Every time you feel like a threat, your body gets denser. And when you get denser, your nervous system doesn't react as good anymore to healing, as it is when it's kind of like relaxed.
Yes. No, it's definitely comes back to the work we do at the Balance, where our approach is to look at the person as a whole, holistically, and not just isolated for a pain or for an injury or for an accident to be healed, but really what makes a human being heal holistically.
Yeah.
But I also understand in today's world, doctors don't have much time to be with their patients, and they become more highly specialized in the different techniques
Yes.
they have to train in, and they don't have the time to cover all the areas, all the aspects. But this is my hope, maybe, is that also in hospitals or that the holistic side, the integrative side can be more and more integrated as well with time.
Yes, there are hospitals and there's doctors and nurses that are very aware of this and they really do the best. I mean, there's doctors that will really come just before the surgery and have a smile at their patients and say, "You're in my hands, so you're in good hands."
Mm-hmm.
I will cover your back, right? And this just helps to have this moment of smile and empathy to feel much more safer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and I do understand the entire world around hospitals and medicine is such a busy, busy world, and a lot of people just don't even like their job anymore because it's so much stress. Mm-hmm. They don't find the time and the heart to pass it on anymore. But maybe in the future we can work on that mm-hmm. because, like I said, it matters a lot.
What is exactly the impact you do on the body? Is it on the muscle, and what do you try to do there? Just specifically, let's say in a therapeutic session.
Well, in a therapeutic session with me, usually the people will be realigned on the bones where I can. So if I find like a knee that is not in the perfect position or a hip, I will realign those, right? And then I will also go into the muscle structures they're not only the muscle structures, because sometimes really the fascias are kind of like too tight, and sometimes the connective tissue, especially if toxins are involved, they're like very compressed. So they're like holding on, maybe the entire outer system is holding on too much to the hip. And so we have to not only put the hip into a place, we have to find a way to strengthen it a little bit. We have to find a way to release the pressure that is pulling joints into a wrong place. So basically, those are my two structures that I, will go into tense tissues, muscles or fibers, or muscles or fascias or connective tissues, and realign the bones. Mm-hmm. So to take the pressure off. And then, of course, this is not the only thing that can be done, because there's so much connected to the body. And, the missing link might be also, personal training, that they will find a personal trainer or go to the gym or find a yoga class to get more flexibility, those things. But I personally focus on my treatments really to restructure bones and find tensions that need to get out.
And how many times do you do that with a patient, with a client, to really get out of this disalignment?
There's no real formula for this for everybody either, because there's people that are just a little bit disaligned and not for such a long time. And or somebody is basically working very well, but now he was doing some gardening work and he lifted up some heavy buckets. Now the back hurts. Usually that is in 1 to 3 sessions, quite well aligned. Mm-hmm. But if we're talking about somebody that is 40, 50, 60, 70 or older and has been in this position for a long time, now the joints get more rigid because they lose the flexibility if they're not used properly, mm-hmm. and the tensions have built up for a long time. Then, sometimes we can only hope to keep it down to a level where they can live without having the pain and being flexible enough. In my world, everybody that has some serious problems should go to the physiotherapist 3 times a week until it's solved. If it takes 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, because what happens when you, for example, you take a very tense neck shoulder muscle, right? And so you really do the sport massage and you start opening up the first fibers. It's kind of like the top layers of tensions, you're kind of like stretching and there's a little bit more circulation in there and everything feels a little bit lighter, but the base still stays from this, what we call myoglosis, right? This is kind of like the balls that we feel. And so when I want to really get down to the bottom, I have to work in layers. They were built in layers. They didn't come as a ball, in one day. So it's kind of like an onion system. We have to, take layer of layer of layer from the onion down. I mean, of course, it would be possible if I stay there 10 hours at one trigger point and, try it in one session. But usually that's not to be tolerated by the people. And also it's not the best to change an old situation too fast. You have to give the entire body some time as well to regulate the position in a new way. So, and if, now we're taking off the first layer and another, 2, 3, 4, 5 or longer weeks go by with the patient going back to his normal life, the stress level, the habitual way of working, carrying its body, then this layer is going to come on very fast. Also, for example, a lot of people are too hesitant to change their life, in the background, which means nutrition, sport habits, moving, doing some yoga classes or something like this. They're too busy or sometimes, I don't want to say lazy, but, I'm saying maybe lazy, to really get into a new habit, which is not going to help because, of course, you cannot change a system with the old way, you caused this problem with. So you have to change in the background also quite a few things. Yeah. And the more the client does at home, for its own well-being, the faster a therapist can work. I undo the damage that has been done as best as I can, but then life comes after my session, right? So, and I never have an idea what do they do with their life after they leave the room? Right. Stress, bad eating habits, whatever, or small little accidents again. So it's kind of like hard to answer this question.
If I look at a regular massage, it's like it might be a bit superficial. It's relaxing, yes, works on different levels, relaxing. But what you do is, if I look at the muscle, you go deeper in a way. You give signals. You give signal to the body to change. But these signals need to be repeated.
They need to be repeated
enough times. But not only that, it gives to the body, it gives to the muscle the possibility to restructure itself in a way. When you give the right nutrition and you give the right training, the muscle training, it will heal long term. And if not, it may get back to its original situation or.
Yeah, quite often, especially if there's, for example, emotions involved that trigger one part of the body. A lot of people that say they have so much neck pain, for example, they had some accident on the neck. And so, we treat the muscles, we treat the stretching, the training, but the emotions, will lead again and again and again to cause this tension. So it's sometimes it's really very, very easy. And in reality, it would be totally easy if we will change everything in life. We have less stress, we have good nutrition, we have enough exercise, we are mentally well, have no storage of emotions or accidents. And then if we maintain that would be perfect. But now we're dealing, of course, with a lot of people that did not have this opportunity to maintain their physical level at this, at this rate. And then it's kind of like, and not everybody responds to the same techniques. There's a lot of people, for example, that get more tense if they're treated too strongly in the muscles. So they probably would need an osteopath, with a little bit more gentle things, to open things up, because there's so many things that an osteopath can also cover in the body. Also when it's connected to organs, maybe, because we also may have like an organ damage or a position even from the organs that are not in space, causing tensions for the back. So, there's different forms of therapies, and not everybody's responding to it well. But for the muscles itself, it's kind of like when they are, in this ball of tensions, they, of course, will respond to some form of mechanical triggering. So the clients may stretch, which is a form of mechanical, opening up the fibers again. They make mobilization movements, such as in yoga, or other forms. They, sometimes respond well to heat therapies. There's even neurotherapy where we do injections right into the muscle areas that are too tense. So there's a lot of things to reopen the mechanics of those muscle fibers.
Yes.
And one of them is, of course, deep tissue, because we really get into it and we are trying to give the impulse of the fibers to have more circulation, to stretch open away from our fingertips. Right? This is just one form. But more important, I think, than a therapist is really the program that clients do at home. Because if you don't use the muscles in the full length, then again, they of course stay tightened and shorter.
Is there something like a perfect body alignment? All the clients you have come across, maybe you see the complex cases, but if you think, or if you know maybe as well, how many bodies are misaligned?
I mean, I've been doing this since 2001, and I literally had 2 people where I could not find any tension or misalignments. They just seemed completely perfect. And but they didn't come to see me with problems. They just had a gift certificate for treatment because their spouses thought that something should be wrong with them as well. So they better might go and enjoy a treatment. And I was really amazed. But those are the only 2 people that I ever touched that really had nothing. And very interesting is when I ask them about their life. Both had kind of like a situation where they didn't feel stressed, neither with a family, not with a job, whatever. And the difference that I noticed when they walked in, they seemed very centered. And that's the first thing that we can actually look at somebody, not even if the eyes are on level or not level. Most people have like either a very active front energy. I'm like one of those more hyperactive persons, right? So I'm just like always doing more to the front. And then there's people with a very lean back protective energy. So they're always kind of like trying to be a little bit protected from life, bending away from it. So, and neither situation is centered. Neither that is centered. You're centered if your life is basically not threatened by anybody or nothing in your life. And then you kind of like have this settled mentality, no stress level, and your body also then is in the centered place. But that's not for most people. Most people suffered from some form of trauma, accident, stress, whatever, which gets us out of balance.
What's the issues with our society, why we get out of this, let's call, balance or misalignment?
Well, on the physical level, first of all, we start with children that sit way too much. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, in my generation also, we were seated too much in school. I mean, long hours that you have to sit, and then at home you have to sit some more and do your homework. And but these days, many schools have extended their schooling hours because it's more practical for the parents to have their free working time as well. And then on top of the school seated hours, a lot of children are placed in front of a tablet or in front of a phone, so they're sitting more. Then, later you have the educational programs, so you're seated again. And, I mean, unfortunately, unless you have like an educational program where you're kind of like more working, like constructors or whatever, they're like out on their legs. Of course, they have their own danger part, right? Because labor is kind of like heavy on the body sometimes as well. But for most people, the seated position is one of the I think most common diseases that we have. And but of course, then I mean, there's people that are relaxed and they're seated all their life and they don't feel pain, whatever. They're maybe a little bit weakish on their physical level, but they're like not so much full of pain. So what usually comes then in addition is that we have this very fast spinning world, which is putting a lot of pressure on the people. So I think a good half of the tensions that reside in the body will come from stressful emotions. So that's a kind of like a natural thing. If you're like in a fight or flight remote, usually everything tenses up to have enough power to run or to fight or whatever. And if you, for example, have parents that don't let you off the hook when you're like training for school because they want you to be the perfect next whatever, this is a lot of stress for the children already. Then there's a lot of emotional stress in schools from teachers, from other school children. We have a big impact on the entire media world. How to be, how to function, how you should, where you should get, who you should become. And so there's kind of like a stress input from all levels. And that on a seated body that cannot get out of it. Because one thing is very natural for the body is when you have stress, you should get moving. As soon as like the real threat is over, you should get your body moving until the stress hormones are worked out again, which means, a good respiration and really working the body fluids to release that pressure of the hormones. And most of us are not let out of the hook. We are stayed, we're seated either with the stress of parents or with the next boss or whatever. Nobody is getting out of their skin anymore. No. For horses, for example, that's absolutely natural. I mean, they get spooked easily. And if somebody scares them, they really tensen up quite a lot. And as soon as that stress command is over, they walk. And they walk a little bit and they just get moving and then they start chewing down and then they're relaxed again.
Or they shake it out.
Everything is fine, right? So too much stress, too much sitting, too many phones in their hands, which is also changing the position. That's basically another thing that is, I think, a disease of the environment, that we are always doing everything to the front, and we don't find the way back anymore to relax the body into the other direction. And phones don't help.
I found it very interesting what you just said. So we should observe more our environment, especially our animals around us, because also we have dogs at home. They can get into a fight, they can be stressed about something, and then they shake it up, and then they will continue.
Then they continue. And there's another one that we should learn from animals, which, I have sometimes difficulties remembering this, but any animal, when they get up after a nap, sleeping, they will stretch first. They never start moving without like stretching their front legs and their hind legs and get a little bit moving. And usually people, they hear the alarm clock in the morning and maybe snooze it a few times. And then, when they're late, they are getting up and then they start making a coffee, brushing teeth and whatever, and get busy. And so the first thing should be that whenever we're rested, seated in the office chair or getting up from a nap or whatever, really stretch into all directions.
Yes.
Yeah, because by nature, when you are in a put position, not moving, everything tensens a little bit, right? It gets a little bit colder, the body temperature goes a little bit down, and everything is a little bit more tense, which is good because we are protected by this tension. So we can keep the position, we're not falling over. While when we're moving, we're, for example, playing, we need more action to move the joints and the muscles. So a muscle or a system, the entire system has to always find out, is this action? Do we need to move? Or is this more tension in order to keep centered and not fall apart? Right? So it's natural that we tense up a little bit when we're, quiet times. But then when we get moving, we should stretch out like a cat. Get things flowing again.
Great. So we'll start stretching.
Yes.
Definitely. Another interesting technique I like to do is very simple. Just go for little walks, basically. I came across also the possibility that our body and our brain particularly need alignment, regular alignment. And what we can do is we need to move left and left side of our body. So we release stress and we release emotional feeling, and our brain does connect to each other and communicate left and right side much better with each other. So having meetings while walking, or if there is any stressful situation, just go out for a walk, even just for 10 minutes. This is
Perfect.
so powerful.
Yes, absolutely perfect. I mean, walking is the most natural form for movement for people, right? Running should also come naturally, but we're not running all the time, but we're built to move. And walking is the most natural way to get your body flowing and every single way, from the liquids, from the brain movements, from the nervous system. And so, like you said, just short walks in between are so helpful. You don't always have to have this hour. Even if you cannot sleep, just go out, for 10 minutes in the dark garden and just walk around a little bit. That would be perfect as well. So, and if you want to make it really perfect, the color green helps. So find as much nature, with greenish things around, which will calm down the nervous system as well. And if you can, without hurting yourself, barefoot. Barefoot walking is the most natural way to connect to the earth, calm down the nervous system, and at the same time, give some nice little training impulses to the body as well.
I came across like about 80% of adults experience some sort of chronic pain in their back once in their lifetime. Does this align with your experience? And another question is also, many use medication to treat pain. What's your opinion on that as well?
Okay, so yes, the statistics, at least in Germany, show that about 80% of all people will experience back problems, back pains, sooner or later, right? So, and with all the clients that I've treated, there's people that say that they don't have back pain, but when you double check, with them because they, for example, come for a shoulder problem or whatever. And since I treat always the entire system with the spine together, because it's connected to the shoulders by the nerves and the muscles and the tendons, I find that they do have back pain. They just didn't notice that. That's what we were talking earlier, that the body does not give all the signals into the brain of awareness if there's something wrong, but there's back issues already there. So, yeah, that's probably about 80% should be something more or less realistic that we have. And I am afraid that the statistics will even move up because now these days we're seated more than the last 20 or 30 years, even. And for the topic of medications, well, I'm not somebody to say that nobody should take medication. Sometimes we have a point of pain that we cannot bear, right? So, we should take the modern help if there's a moment where we say it's too hard to tolerate, at least for a short period of time. But in my opinion, pain medication is being prescribed too fast and too long. A lot of my clients tell me that they've been taking months or years ibuprofen for their back pain, for their chronic back pain. So, and while there's a study that says that sometimes, or there are studies that sometimes the pain has chronified itself by the awareness, even though the problem does not exist anymore. So sometimes it's good to interrupt a pain pattern that our brain reflects us for a short period of time to see if that reflex stops, right? If somebody can afterwards, without that memory of pain, move better or feel pain-free. Okay. But on the other hand, it is kind of like also proven that taking the normal pain medication, like ibuprofen or aspirin, will actually keep that problem alive. Okay,
Why is that so?
well, I think it's one of the things is also that people are then so strongly connected to that expectation of pain and taking the tablets. It's kind of like this inner mind circle. It's just like, oh my God, I have pain. I need to take that medicine. And, so they're kind of like getting into this loop of expectations. And also, in my opinion, sometimes the processes that we have of pain are also somewhat inflammatory, right? And the big thing in pharma industry is to suppress any form of inflammation, which I don't agree on, because if it's not an external inflammation caused by a cut and bacteria that come inside, it's always a process of repairing itself from the body. So, for example, if a tendon has a lot of stress because it's too, strongly pulled all the time. So now the fibers of the tendons are threatened to be torn. And then, we have this pain signal for the body that there's something wrong with the tendon. Then we're taking a pain medication. But instead of just cutting down the pain, now the inflammatory repairing process is also interrupted, because inflammation means repair. Sometimes we it's maybe good for a short time when the pain is not durable anymore to interrupt some pattern, but the real repair process should be supported by the change of the position from the body. So, more relaxation from the muscles, less stress on the tendons, repositioning a joint that is, in stress. And then usually the body will find a final process of repairing. If you have, for example, tendonitis in your shoulder because your shoulder is too far front, right? It's rolled inside front, so it does not have enough space under the top of the roof anymore. So every time you lift your arm, it's squeezing on the tendons and rubbing it. So then there's an inflammation, which of course is extremely painful. And, if nothing is done, it's getting more and more painful and inflamed. So, but if you're like taking medication just to interrupt that signal of pain, it's still the same position. It's still the same problem. So we need to really work on the shoulder position to get it back into the space where it can drop down from the roof of the shoulder joint and have enough space and room to move, the arm in all directions. And then usually some part of inflammation will continue until things are repaired, because the body, is able to repair basically almost everything that we have.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So inflammation depends on the origin of how and why it was induced in the first place.
Exactly.
Would make sense to use medication or not.
Yes.
What about neck pain? I heard that if you have neck pain or it starts suddenly, you stand up in the morning and you have this stiff neck, let's say. I heard that, okay, it would be good to get a pain medication before it gets too much more stiff and tense. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, yes, there is sometimes a benefit, for the mind to not buy too much into the pain, right? But we should always double check if the pain is not there for a real, reason. Because if the neck, no matter if you get up in the morning or you're having it after long desk hours in the office, if there is pain, it's because something is wrong with the body. And it tells you that this is not a position that is safe. Most back pain is not directly connected to hernias from the disc, but usually the body tells you to stop what you're doing before the disc breaks. Yes. So taking that pain medication for me is a little bit like bringing the car to the mechanic when the oil lamp is burning. So the mechanic now takes out the relay from the light bulb and says, okay, problem solved. Just because you don't see the light burning anymore, you still don't have enough oil maybe in the car. Yes. So this is what we're doing with the body all the time with the medications. We are just turning off the warning signals instead of repairing it.
And a lot happens through the spine. I think this is, let's say, what is connecting our brain, heavy head to the rest of our body, what are usual effects you see with the spine and the pressure on it and disalignment of it?
Well, basically everything happens through the spine. You know, we have this canal where all the nerves go through and all the liquids, the spinal liquids, and they transport a bunch of information. You couldn't even imagine how much information really flows up and down through the entire spine. So, and then from the vertebrae of the spine, there's bundles of nerves going out into the body, spreading into nerve families that, you know, for example, one might go to some certain muscle group, the other one goes to the skin tissue, the other one goes to the organs. So each spine carries its own family supporting that. So if we are out of alignment, the likelihood of a not good flow in the entire system is quite likely. And depending on how strongly it is curved or how strongly it's compressed, sometimes you have vertebra bodies that are built quite nicely, but they're leaning a little bit over to one side or another. But the root, the canal of the nerves is open, so everything kind of can flow. But sometimes the body shifts also a little bit, you know, to another side. So we have like this compressed spinal canal, which can cause quite a few problems because then nothing is flowing there anymore. So also when they're not aligned, they have more pressure to one side leaning than the other one on the disc, which for me, one of the most common causes of disc hernias is because the spine is not correct in a straight position and putting too much tension on one side of the disc. And then, so, you know, with enough wear and tear, then again, this disc will open and we talk about the propulsion, right, from the hernias. And then depending on, you know, which direction that goes, we might squeeze nerves up to a point where there is a surgery necessary. Usually not. You know, now these days we know that most disc surgeries that we used to do all the time for the smallest things. And now most doctors say that it's not necessary unless you're like completely out of feeling your legs or feeling your arm, you know, or not being able to go to the toilet anymore. There's sometimes where you should really go to the doctor and have surgery as fast as possible. But other than that, we should really just give the body the correct treatments because also a disc will regenerate.
How to support the self-healing?
Yes, the self-healing support is always to take the body out of the causing position. So if it was not straight and too compressed, we have to liberate the body back to a straighter or more liberal position. And then it's kind of like if you take a sponge, right? And the sponge has a bigger volume. And if you squeeze it, it gets smaller and it's compressed. So if you're taking the compression away, the sponge can develop back to its original position. The body is kind of like the same.
Taking away compression, manual therapy, but also biochemical.
Biochemical, very important, yes.
So with all the issues someone could develop and pain and chronic pain through misalignment, what can someone do starting from birth to prevent these issues happening throughout our lives?
Yes, I personally think it should be supported right after birth because problems can even start before birth, but a lot of problems start right with the birth traumas. And I personally think that children should be accompanied with the correct forms of training and help to stay aligned. One of the things we disalign is because we're right-handed or left-handed. That's quite natural, right? I mean, we're all born with one preference site, and which makes, you know, of course, that we use that site more often. And if you're, for example, right-handed and you're carrying all the heavy things and all the writing, all the, you know, tiny things, everything is kind of like basically right-handed, then this side is always more in a challenge than the other one. The other one has the challenge that it has to retighten in order for the other side not to dip over. It's always the same, right? And then we also have a right leg or a left leg. So, I mean, if I, for example, talk to sports people, I don't only ask for the right hand when they're playing tennis. I also ask which is the stronger leg, because as much as we're right-handed or right leg, we are right-footed or left-footed. So, and in my opinion, to just realign this balance is to teach children right from the start to use both sides. That doesn't mean they have to share 50-50, everything. That might be a little bit complicated because also life requires an automated system. I mean, if you're driving a car, you cannot think about shifting with the left hand. The shift is on the right side. So, we need some automation to be safe and to be effective sometimes as well. But in time available, we can also train very much adults as well, not only children, to use the other side. Start brushing, for example, with the left side. Your teeth, comb your hair with the left side, or even take the forks and the knife in the different hands and try to cut it the other way around. Switch where you take the bags, very little things I mean, for the more heavy motoric things like to carry those things, but then also practice writing with the left side. Or if you're left-handed, practice writing with the right side. Yeah. You have to, of course, always switch around. And no, we are far away from those times where everybody was trained to be a right-handed person only. So we have quite a few left-handed people in this world right now, naturally left-handed. They, of course, need to switch it around, right? So we need to kind of like skill the other side to take over enough responsibility and activity to stay more centered. It's very interesting when you go to riding, horseback riding, especially if you have like the dressage riders, there is an utmost work put into taking out the natural crookedness of a horse. Everybody's talking about the natural crookedness of the horse and how to balance it so that the horse can do everything as beautiful on the right side as on the left side and reverse, and it makes the horse smarter, and it makes it more balanced, it makes it safer to ride, and it makes it, of course, more beautiful to ride. With people, nobody is talking about it. There's no effort done in this at all. So this will be one of the ways to train children right from the start to be more creative, smarter, more skilled, more stronger on the other side as well. And one thing to really balance a body mentally and physically, by the way, is juggling. Learn how to juggle, because if you juggle and you're like succeeding, I mean, if you're not succeeding in juggling, your brain is not connected yet, right? But you can train your brain to be always be connected by juggling. And I think all children like to practice that. That's a fun game. So, but juggling for children, easy to learn, easy game to change the body awareness. And then I think also that parents need to learn, maybe with help, however they find assistance, to really look at their children with their awareness, as we talked earlier about, just like really see if one shoulder comes a little bit higher, or when it's walking, if one leg is always twisting out a little bit more than the other, and so the awareness to see if there's something developing. And then, I personally think for most parents, it would be easier to take the child at least one time a year to a professional to find the small triggers, something that is not so obvious to the parent's eyes, to find out if the tension is starting, or, if something is kind of like getting out of alignment. This should be preventive, at least one time a year, just to make sure that everything is still in place where it should be and no tension is building up. And parents should be very cautious after accidents. I mean, not every accident will have an impact that lasts in the body, but there's quite a few more than we think.
Yes.
So, yeah, and then if you skill and teach correctly, and also create a bigger awareness of the body, then this is, I think, one of the biggest steps we need to grow up straight and balanced.
One of my daughters does horseback riding, another plays tennis, another, the boy plays football. And you can see everyone is differently affected in their bodies about it. So it's for parents, I think, also a challenge to keep by themselves, like always, the right view on what is misaligning or not. So having regular checks as prevention definitely helps. How do you see growing out of childhood, getting more into adulthood, early adulthood? What can someone do, like in their 20s and their 30s, and while we age?
Well, I think, naturally young people like to move a little bit more, but, affected by those times that we have today where the internet is, always on our side, we tend to move less. So then we have the thing that all young people, young people up to 50, 60 even sometimes, have this sweet little ignorance of aging. Because the body feels young and normal. There's not too many issues unless you had some accidents. And, even if you're not so sporty right now, you don't care because, this you could maybe do later, whatever. And you don't compare yourself with the generation, that is already 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. So you kind of like ignore the fact that from being 20 to becoming 80, there's a long road in between. And an 80-year-old that is not so good physically anymore, is not flexible anymore, doesn't have enough strength anymore, something happened in that way. So when you're 20, 30, 40, 50, you should still really remember that the body needs an assistant on an every life level. Not every day maybe, but every life level, because you will, hopefully get there to this age. And so for me to find some exercise form, something that includes hopefully some strengthening, but also flexibility and mobility is for me key. And if you only have 1 or 2 times a week time for it, that's fine. More is sometimes better. Yeah. But we can also add the little short walks in between, which helps a lot. But the key is to get moving. And also a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old should go for a checkup in between and, find some assistant that can say just like, oh, there's some spine problems, your shoulder doesn't seem to be correct or the knee is not correct. So that stays kind of like the same. We need kind of like the TÜV, yes. the yearly inspection, maybe on a physical level. And if you have time, and I know for many people it's a financial challenge to pay for massages themselves because general just preventive massages are not paid by the insurance companies, and these days people have to fight even harder also for the physiotherapy sessions. And that's kind of like becoming a bigger challenge in the future yet, I think. But maybe, we should also think about, that's worth it to save away some money during the entire year to have one time a year a few sessions of realigning, and reversing this. Because you said something about with your children that, they have different hobbies and of course they have effects. I want children to have hobbies and sports and play just as hard as they want to. That's natural. I started riding at the age of 7 and I counted about 50 horseback accidents until the age of 21. Wow. So that's probably one of the things why I had later on some of my spinal problems as well. But I grew up in this era when you hit the ground, you get up, you look to see if everything's still in place. You try to figure out if something is bleeding too strongly and if you need a Band-Aid, and then you brush off the dirt and you continue. And move on. Well, yes, and most of the time I didn't even tell my mom about the accidents because she didn't like me to go riding in the first place. So, there would have not been anybody to correct any damage, but they happened. That damage kind of like happens sometimes. And if I would reverse the time, I would not stop riding and say just like, okay, this is dangerous. My body might get into trouble because, of course we have to play life. We're here to enjoy, right? So damage will be done no matter what we do. We use our body and we serve it with all the passion that we can find for some things. And then we have to go repair a little later. That will be the same thing. You put the gas into your car first, then you drive it until the inspection sign comes, and then you bring it to the shop and he looks as everything is fine, and then you put in more fuel and you go again. you keep going on the street, and your body should as well. So some sports are more dangerous than others, and I'm not quite sure I would support that as a parent, but they should experience their bodies and, mentally get into sports, to find out what they like. And what excites them, and experience how the body moves, because when you're a child, you have a lot to learn about how the body functions.
Yes, and definitely also it depends on what sport at what age. That makes also a big difference, because if I look at that myself, your body compensates a lot if you're in your 20s and 30s. But once you get in your 40s and then 50s, it's not. You need to be careful about your body. You need to protect the body as the number one longevity rule. Don't hurt yourself in the first place, because I felt it. You have a little injury which knocks you out for weeks or months, and then you cannot continue your routine. You get out of your routine. That's a kind of a cycle. Downward spiral cycle you cannot get out of. And this can start with something little, even by doing sport, playing football, for example. In my 40s, I used to play football like once a week with a bunch of mid-age men and friends. And it's fun. It's fun to play so. But I stopped because I had again and again injuries, and they knocked me out of my routines. That's maybe one of rule number one: just avoid accidents and avoid injuries.
I think that's important to avoid them, of course. But one of the key points to avoid injuries is maintaining a body that is strong and flexible always. Right? Because, there's 80 and 90-year-olds that play very hard, they fall, and they don't hurt themselves. It's usually, we say that, for example, a child doesn't fall, a child doesn't break when it falls, because it's still so soft and flexible. And that's true. The same is for drunk people. When drunk people fall, they hardly get as injured as a normal adult that is falling, because the drunk person doesn't have the reflex to tighten up. And children bend around objects like a rubber ball, right? So if an older person falls or trips, it's usually because we're already too rigid. And we are also sometimes already by experiences a little bit afraid. So we tighten up, and then we fall, and then, something gives in. And I don't promote that, when you're like 80 years old, you should jump around on a trampoline like a young person, because the likelihood that you will get hurt is higher. But the goal should be always to maintain that flexibility your entire life. It's, for example, some people are more flexible by nature than others. We have those that are ballerinas by nature. They can make that split, right? I couldn't even, in my youngest years, I couldn't do a split. I have less flexible joints, which makes a body stronger. And we don't have to compensate so much with the muscle strings to protect overly flexible joints. I used to hate it because I wanted to be as flexible as those ballerinas. But then by now I understand that God gave me this body because he knew I would become a physiotherapist and I need more strength, right? So, but what we have, by nature can be kept. We can find a lifestyle where we can still do a backflip at the age of 80. It's just we don't do it. When you watch children, they're like, playing, tossing around on the floor, bending in all sorts of directions. They show you all the time that they can do the backflip. And then, latest, I think in, 10th or 11th grade or whatever, they're sitting, and nobody is doing a backflip anymore unless they're kind of like in gymnastic class.
Yes.
So, and then you try to ask a 25-year-old and they already tell me just like, until 5 years ago, I was able to do that backflip. Now I just can't, much less like 40, 50, 60. I'm now training it again with the help of a gymnastic ball, of one of those big balls to bend around backwards.
Okay.
And I can touch again. But I'm yet to throw away the ball under me, right?
So Yes, I understand. When we age, it's becoming more and more difficult. I mean,
But only because we don't use it.
we don't use it, or we haven't used it frequently enough,
Exactly.
possibly.
Or we had injuries and surgeries, yes.
Injuries, surgeries, they knock us out, and then
Yes.
you have this spiral. Whoa. But also we know, like bones, for example, they need impact to stay strong while we
Yes.
age. And
Yes.
so sport is not just for the muscles, it's for the whole
Everything.
system connecting. I often also see like people when they get like 40, 50, 60, they start to do very excessive sport and train for marathons and go out and do the extreme side. Is this a healthy way of doing sport, or is moderation, and what is moderation, more suggested for healthy aging?
Well, I personally think it can be just as healthy if you train in a correct way, right? So a lot of people, when they start late-aged, midlife crisis style training something because they want to prove something that they had missed so far, they only look into the aspect of being strong enough, running fast enough. They don't look into the aspects of stretching, maintaining a good muscle health, nutrition, and the recovery times. Most people think that when they don't train for one day, that's lost time because they need to train, more in order to get stronger. But really, 50% of your training time should be recovery time because your muscles build in the recovery time and not in the training time.
Yes.
You're using them, right? So, but if you start late, then you should always start at the level that you can, with like a kind of like a step kind of like thing where you build training higher and higher. I think one of the oldest marathon ladies started at the age of 80. She started. And also what we call, her name is the Iron Nun. She started triathlon at a very high age. And she did a ton of triathletes, a triathlon, even the Ironman she did.
Wow.
After the age of 80. But I mean, she did it in a way that her body would be able to support it. And of course, it could be a little bit different depending on, your background. If you have any other, issues with organs, heart or whatever, But if you want to have a high goal and you're already middle-aged or higher, go for it. It's not bad if you accompany this in a good way.
It's very individual again.
Very individual, yes.
Women
Yes.
versus men, and what age women while they undergo, let's say, premenopause, menopause, and later on.
It is a question of the status and the maintenance that we have. But no matter what age, and no matter if you're male or female, we all have one thing in common, and the body builds up everything every day according to the use. Okay, we kind of like exchange 50 to 70 billion cells every day. Every day in your entire body, just most of it you don't see. When your skin is used, old, burned, whatever, it peels off. You can tell that, or your hair is falling out. The exchange of the cells that we have in the muscles and the bones, you don't see, and they're totally exchanged completely. Your bone, any bone in your body, is not the same bone in about 1 to 1.5 years. There's tissues that exchange themselves completely as fast as 3 days. You just don't see them because there's everything inside. So all the cells that exchange in your body have a system. So one is a muscle system, one is a bone system, whatever. And the information, how they restructure that body, the muscle, the bone, is given by the information of usage. Right? So if you're like older and you're starting to use the bones more, but you give it enough time to think a little bit about this, your body will build up stronger bones just as well. If you don't use it, I mean, I always say that the body is like a little bit like this farmer that has a horse in its barn. If the horse is not working, it's not feeding it, right? It's the same with the body. If your bones don't have to do something or your muscles don't, the body doesn't not give a lot of energy to those structures, and so it doesn't become stronger. So, but of course, there's a smart way. I mean, overusing it before your body was ready probably will lead more likely to frustration and damage. Yes.
And I mean, what you're saying is use your body or you will lose it
Yes,
at
use it
some
or lose it.
point. But if someone, let's say, is 70 years old, he has pain in his knee and overweight, and it might be difficult from his position to stand up and get moving.
Yes.
What would you tell these people?
I would tell those people to really start with the small things, right? And first of all, they need always to have a goal in mind, because take a 70-year-old overweight, knee problems. He probably didn't have his goals set yet for physical health. Otherwise, he would have not ignored, getting to this, poorly shape before. So now we need to reconstruct, what goal he has. Is the goal that he just in 20 years doesn't want to sit in the wheelchair, or is his goal to say just like, okay, I didn't take care of it, but I still want to run a marathon. Whatever you have, for a goal will kind of like determine also the steps that you take towards it. But no matter what the goal is, you can always start with the smallest step. You can exercise some small squats every day. You can change the diet. You can start, taking one stairway instead of the elevator. Those things you can do without killing yourself. And then, maybe a week later, you can do semi squats 20 times instead of only 10 times or 5 times, So we're kind of like building up with what we have. And the body will learn quite fast if you give it something to do that, it was not used to it. The body is designed to make the most out of, the challenges that you give it to him.
Most frequent accidents happen through falling.
Yes.
When we age, and then we hurt ourselves, then we break our hip, or then we get out of a rhythm, and so. But we need to think about these things very early, and in our 30s, in our 40s, and start planning who we want to be at 80 or older.
Yes.
And because it gets more and more difficult, and our metabolism slows down. What I also in my daily fitness routine, I do jumping jacks, and I try to impact also my bones and joints, so they can be stronger because of falling down later. So it's not that I go for the extreme for the marathon, but more low impact.
Yes.
Muscle, skeleton, like a little mix of different activities combined with massages and a deep body tissue treatments.
Yes. I totally agree with what you mentioned about, when we have like an accident, when we're like older, whatever. But here also, I want to mention that we have to watch our mindset quite carefully, because we have a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to aging. Just because, people are so used to tell, each other how difficult it is when we're aging, how much slower we are, the metabolism and all those things. And it's not as true as we say. And the difference, for example, between a person that has a crash at the age of 80 or 90, I mean, one of the most common is they trip and they have the upper thigh bone broken, right? And I even learned in class that this is kind of like a death sentence for old people. This is usually the point of no return, because then it's kind of like a spiral going downwards. But I didn't find it to be true. I mean, we have, for my former partner, the dad broke his upper thigh at age of 97, and he was on his feet just doing well, walking after just a couple of months. And I've treated other older people that have, of course, been more active than others. They've been always, doing their gardening, cycling. One 95-year-old that broke his upper thigh told me when I asked him why, he looked like an 85-year-old. And I mean, a very stunningly beautiful 95-year-old man with like an aura that, just any 50-year would have what to change with him. And I asked him how. And he said, well, I take my bicycle every morning and I drive to the public swimming pool and I swim and then I go back and then I do my homework and I do my lunch and then I do my shopping. So he stayed quite active, but of course, in a pace that was allowed to his age. And also he healed quite fast. So most people that come back on their feet quite fast are the people that have prepared a little bit, right? And they have the attitude, oh, that's nothing. Give me a few weeks and I'll be right back. Yes. And there's if family members, and that's quite like a big point, in age, it's like a lot of family members will treat an older person as like this fragile, careful to be, and this look of just like, oh, let's see how long you will still live, So this does something to your mind. And I don't know, we probably don't have the time to go too much into epigenetics, but if we're talking about the buildup of cells, I mean, they used to say it's the genes that determine, this. But from the epigenetics, now we know that the genes don't have a boss function. They need an environmental trigger to get started. And there's different environmental triggers that can start the gene to be active, but one of the strongest ones is emotions. That is proven in epigenetics. So if we think that we heal a little bit slower, that's what your body does, right? So if we think just like, that's nothing, my body can do it, then that's what the body does, right? So, and yes, sometimes the metabolism is a little bit slower, and menopause can make a big difference to hormones. But actually, we find out more and more that if this is true, then it's because something is internally out of sync as well, out of balance. Because there's the body with the proper nutrition and the proper exercise and the proper mental health should function just fine. Maybe not just as fast, but we don't have to be as fast.
A lot happens in our mind and
Yes.
in the intention and knowing who we want to be in the future, like setting a goal. But this is where the difficulty starts, changing behavior today for my future self. And that's the mindset someone should get into and imagine, who is it I want to be? What body is it I want to have?
Yes.
And really have a plan for it. Make a plan. We make appointments. We plan for our vacations, right? We make a plan to buy a new car. We make a plan to save for a new house. So we imagine what we want to be, where we want to be, and what we want to get in our life. And I believe we should also prepare for a healthy aging. And who do we want to be? How do we want to move? What do we want to be able to do? Because most people think, oh, okay, when I retire, I will start traveling. But if you have pain and you cannot move and you have issues, you cannot travel anymore. So what's the life I want to do when I'm in my 70s, in my 80s, in my 90s?
Yes.
If I get there.
You're mentioning a quite common problem. I had a lot of conversations with middle-aged clients that were obviously in a very bad state, in a physical state. And I told them just like, listen, you need to take some time for your body as well. And a lot of them told me, I don't have time right now. I'm too important in the company. I'm just, I have to do this and that and that. And well, I only have to work 10 or 15 more years and then I can enjoy life. And the truth is not that. Most people that abuse their body for the 40, 45 minimum years of working in a company have the problem that when they're retired, they're more often at the doctors than at vacations, right? And yes, it is no fun if you just had a knee surgery or hip surgery or heart surgery, and then you are going on your vacation. You still will be very careful and not enjoying this anymore. And I'm not saying that everything is preventable. Because we have accidents, and sometimes we're not lucky enough to grow up with aware parents or aware systems that supported us to maintain a healthy body. So sometimes it's not so easy to catch up 40, 50, 60 years of damage and reverse it. But by the way, it's possible if you're working on this long enough. But yeah, if you're kind of like missing living your life every day, enjoying it every day, doing something for your body, physical and mental health every day, and not just wait for the day, when you retire, that's extremely dangerous. Especially none of us, we don't know when we're going to die. We just don't know. That's a good way, a good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing. But yeah, we should take room to enjoy life as it is here right now.
Enjoy, but I like the term you mentioned, not abuse our body.
Yes.
And that this is where it starts. If we abuse our body for a long period of time, if we're still young, the body can compensate. If you get to, and I've seen people, even my own father had at 48, like a stroke, and this turned his life around.
Yes.
He was able to function, but with medication, a bunch of medication, and not work that strong anymore, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So, or people have then a heart attack and die at this age, but just because maybe they were not taking care enough about their body and abusing it, as you nicely said.
Yes, yes.
What do you do to stay in balance and aligned with your body and mind?
Well, I have abused my body quite well in the past. I have to admit it, because I was playing harder than, taking care of regeneration processes. But my excuse is that, I only learned to be a physiotherapist at the age of 30. And I still play hard sometimes. I'm big on cycling, and I like road cycling in the mountains. So this is quite a lot of stress. And I am absolutely willing to abuse, in a way, my body, if I take enough time to recover and do something well for it, just in order to have fun with a passion, with a passion of mine. So we always have to bring that in balance as well. How much worth is the abuse that we are doing? But in order to balance my body on a daily level, I really do. I start my day like this. These days, when I get up, I sit in front of an infrared light and I start a little meditation. Well, it's a kind of like a checkup with myself. How do I feel? How do I feel about this day? I do a little meditation. And then when I'm done with this, I do a little yoga. And yes, there's very few days where I skip the yoga, because I often, think just like, okay, now you only have 5 or 10 minutes, I do something. So I really managed to do some yoga in the morning, every morning. And then I personally love running, especially in nature. So I do what we call trail running. I go into the mountains and the trails. I just don't want to be so much on pavement and in the city. This is kind of like not so nice for my eyes. And I do a lot of cycling, road cycling, and mountain biking. And I personally make it a point also now these days in the evening to do a little short stretching before I go to bed and do another mindset, which mean mindset routine, which means that I really have another check-in with myself, one for the body, and I really kind of like screen where do I have so much tension, and kind of like add breathing work to the areas where I, find tension, because I think that the combination of breath work with tension is very helpful from, changing the biochemistry from the inside. And then I do a little bit checkup with my day, how did I feel about it? And try to always end the day with a relaxed mind and gratefulness.
It's a beautiful routine. Yeah.
Yes, and I think it's sometimes I'm a person that grew up with a lot of pressure in my life, and I'm also like by nature I'm like a doer, so I'm like always scheduled. I want to get this done. I have 1,000 things in my mind that I want to get done, and so yeah, my day is usually over before I know it, and I think that the body likes. And the mind, likes small things better than when we don't do nothing. And then one time a week or one time a month, we try to catch up with all that. So it's the small little breaks, the small little things, the small little check-ins, I sometimes do also like a 45-minute yoga routine if I have time. Okay. But even if I'm tight on the schedule, I try to really do just a quick 5 to 10 minutes in order to give the body some flow.
Yeah.
And
so you are aware of it, and you try to implement it as much.
Yes.
As much as possible.
As much as possible, exactly. And since my work is also, my work is not better than office work because I'm always leaning over the table, the massage table. I'm bent forward, so I'm kind of like out of balance in my work quite a lot. And so, of course, if I do this daily in my life, I have to find some work of undo. So some way of to undo this also on a daily level.
That's why the ball.
That's why the ball, any sorts of exercises. I also go to the gym, yes. But that I do about 1 or 2 times a week because the increase of serious muscle mass is one of those things that will activate so many things in your body, included on the hormonal level, that I think this is one of the things that we all need to understand, that movement itself, it's fine, but your muscles will not grow and give you not the benefits of your serious muscle growth. You don't have to be a bodybuilder, obviously, but 1 or 2 times a week, some, serious muscle weightlifting work is very beneficial.
For men and women.
For men and women, especially for women. It shows that women have, after a certain age, even almost a higher benefit of this than men, because they usually were undertrained before. So, yes.
My last question to you, when you could now tell everyone in the world one wisdom, something you would like to share to them, what they can do in their life, what would that be?
Well, I think the most important thing that we should always remember, that our body is the only vessel that will join us from the beginning to the end on our journeys. So we have to respect it and maintain it.
It was a real pleasure having you here today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
I learned a lot. And I enjoy also a lot your treatments. We do regularly meet, and I'm very glad about that. Happy and grateful for the work also you do for the balance with our clients and the success we achieved there, improving their lives. Thank you very much for being here again.
The pleasure is on my side.
And,
thank you.
Thank you, Elke.
Thank you so much, Abdullah.